Today, I'd like to welcome Peony Lee. Peony is originally from Hong Kong, but moved to the UK at the age of 15. And since then, she's been living in London the whole time and has had a really interesting career. Some of the highlights of her career is that she was head of investments at Founders Factory, a venture accelerator, a corporate venture accelerator. So she got really deep into the startup scene in tech and in investing. Then she moved on to be head of operations at Day, which is a startup tampon company in the feminine care space. And now Peony's got several interests as an entrepreneur, working on a lot of different projects. Some are in stealth right now, but very exciting. I look forward to when they explode and become huge. And given her background, both in Asia and in the West, particularly in the UK, Peony has some really great perspective and is a really wonderful person to talk to about this. So welcome, Peony.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. You're pretty wonderful too during this podcast, and
did I say it right?
With
did I say it right?
Right, my
your
name.
Introduction or like anything missing? Highlights
that
in your life?
It's perfect introduction in a nutshell. That is me.
Great. Thank you. So I mean, I think as you know, today we're here to talk about stuff that's happening in Asia that might be valued in the West. How personal is that topic to you? I know like you've grown up in Asia, but then moved to the West, the UK when you were younger. Can you explain a bit more about that story?
Sure. So I'm from Hong Kong, and I think since I was like 13, I was fantasizing to go to the UK and speak English in a British way, and somehow also fantasize about the weather. That's definitely a joke.
Really? Wow.
And no, I didn't do that. But I just love the education here, and I just want to know more about the culture. So I came here when I was 15 alone, and went boarding school, and then and I think the whole dream was about going to the best university in the UK, and I'm so happy that I made it to Cambridge, despite like the 3 years I've been struggling really to get, good grades and things. But it has been a fantastic experience, and my worldview and academics and the people that I know has just been like leveled up completely when I went to Cambridge. So that was fantastic. And straight after that, everyone tell me that, oh, you have to get a job in the most prestigious sector and the most highest paying sector, which is at the time investment banking, in mergers and acquisitions. So God knows what I'm thinking, but I went into oil and gas mergers and acquisitions. So for 2.5 years, all I do every day is wake up at 8 and then sleep at 4 a.m. Putting financial models together, evaluating how much does this oil well cost, the fun bits of that, going to North Sea and going to Stavanger, which is a town in Norway, to see all these offshore oil and gas assets has been, like totally eye-opening. But I also know in the grand scheme of things, oil is going to go down. And we're all talking about electric cars, renewables, when everyone else in the team just kept telling me how it's insignificant, it's not going to be the trend, it's not going to be here in 20 years. And I don't want to be in a career where I can't see myself in 20 years. And that macro fact is what really guided me to switch career. And so then I sort of go into startups and went into technology. It's because this is where I saw the future lies, and I want to learn more about starting businesses. So it's really since then that I have this dream of wanting to build a company and start a business. But I also know I need to learn, and I need to, really understand the ecosystem, the people in it, and being in investments is the best because you get to see all the business models, you get to meet so many people. That has been another fantastic experience, and the team there just so diverse and so many skill sets in one room. So leaving Founders Factory.
What were you doing exactly at Founders Factory? Were you investing on behalf of a fund in startups? Was there a specific vertical, a bit of everything?
Sure. So I was managing a team of, I would say, like 4 people. And we have 7 sectors at the time. So we have beauty, travel, and beauty is backed by L'Oreal, travel is backed by EasyJet. And then what else do we have? We have Aviva for fintech and insurtech. We have Guardian for media, M&S for retail, etc. So these big brand names and these big corporates that are willing to, spend time with the startup, work with them, and opening up synergies on either the commercial front or even just mentorship. But I had the team to basically scope out these opportunities, do due diligence, and get the deal through, and present in the investment committee. And if we think that this opportunity and this founder is really worth investing in, so pulling strings, making sure the corporate understand the value. And also I have actually introduced a lot of startups and corporates so that they actually did a pilot as well. So a lot of these commercial investment decisions and negotiation, I was there doing that role for like around a year or so, invested in more than 60 companies. So wow. that was definitely a huge learning curve, because I've never done investment before. And I've never even been in that role. I've never managed people before. So the trust that the management team gave me was something that I've always been grateful for.
Yeah, that sounds like such an awesome opportunity. What made you decide to move on? Were you tired of that? Do you want to try something new? What was the decision making in your head?
Sure. I mean, to be completely honest, 60 investment a year, like you can imagine, it is 5 investment a month, and it's volume based. It is very, very prone to burnout, that sort of role. I fully really enjoyed it, but going into Founders Factory, like my main intention is I want to learn how to build a business. And the more that I was doing investment and the more volume based that I was doing, the further away I felt I was, away from the company building journey and, getting my hands dirty. And I'm always sitting on the other side of the table, listening to, the founders pitching, listening to the struggles. And I just really wish I can be on the other side of the table. Yeah. And now I am. But the journey of getting there is also, not a straight line. So after Founders Factory, as you said, like, as you asked me why I left, because it seems like such a great opportunity, I left precisely because I just want to start trying doing something myself. But I completely failed doing the first one. Failed in a way where I just didn't feel it's the right time. I didn't feel like I have the right resources. I didn't feel like I have the right abilities neither. And being able to say that I don't and take a step back, that was actually one of the biggest learnings, because sometimes I just need to check my ego and just be like, okay, if I don't know how to do A, B, and C, I can learn it from somewhere else. And that's why I joined Day. This is another wonderful company that is sort of hard in the physical product sort of realm. They do and they manufacture tampons, which is coated with CBD. So women will get pain relieving sort of properties, especially if they suffer from endometriosis, which is a form of severe period pain. So I oversee all the operations, the manufacturing, fulfillment. I set up the whole fulfillment structure, hire and train people. I overlook all the accounts. I also do a lot of sort of like internal team management, OKR, and that really, really puts all the theories that I've learned at Founders Factory into practice. And that has just been fantastic. Yeah.
That's amazing. And now you're on to some very exciting new entrepreneurial activities in your life. Now, that's a really interesting backstory. I mean, knowing that you're from Hong Kong, like what is your relationship to Asia right now? Do you think the UK is home, this is where you'll be forever? Or I'm sure you still have family in Hong Kong. Do you think about that as a place you want to be in the near future, or what are your thoughts on that?
So if you ask me, China, Asia, and Hong Kong, they're all such different entities, like very, very different like angles to it. I think Hong Kong will always be a place that is special to me. Like I grew up there, I was born there, I have a lot of friends there, and you will get a really good lifestyle there if you're slightly more affluent. But Hong Kong is a place where the wealth gap is just one of the biggest actually in the world. And for a person like me, it's also very hard to just see that in my eyes and not being able to do anything. So Hong Kong probably park it aside
Hmm.
until I think I have some ability to actually change some conversations and do some actual stuff in Hong Kong, then I would love to be back. China, I think it has definitely been a change of perception.
Yeah.
I was brought up in Hong Kong, and in the early days, China is still being developed, is still opening up. Compared to like the level of sort of like development in Hong Kong is different. So whenever I go to China with my parents, they have business in China. It's always a bit of like, oh, I wish I can be in Hong Kong right now.
Yeah.
This place is a bit, like run down. It's very dirty, the toilets, etc. This is what you think when you're young. And I wish someone can tell me more about all the interesting stuff that's being done in the country to change it. And now we see the outcome of it. We really feel it. And I can only have pure admiration to Chinese culture, Chinese history, Chinese people, so hardworking and have a sense of respect for other people, but also for themselves. This is what I've observed time and time again in the UK. Young Chinese that want to do something, they somehow all have that sort of mental blockage, but they also are just so hardworking. So in that sense, I have so much admiration. I want to learn more about, especially the tech scene and how people do business in China. I speak Mandarin and Cantonese, but if you ask me, do I know the culture there? Do I know the online social media culture there? Like, this is something that I need to learn. Do I know the way they do business? This is something that I need to learn. But on the flip side, I know they also want to learn how the Western world has been doing business. So that is huge synergies. I think there is just so much on the softer side of things for me to explore.
What kind of trends do you think are most exciting in a place like China, or more broadly speaking, Asia? Because I mean, you talk about it as this place of like massive change where there's like a mutually beneficial relationship where you're not an expert in China, but you have a desire
Yeah.
to be more of one. And at the same time, there's like a give and
Yeah.
take there. Are there certain things that excite
Yeah.
you the most about China or Asia in general?
So many things. I would say China, I'm excited about how the country is starting to look at brand and soft power in a different way. And when I say that, what I meant is in the last probably 20, 30, 40 years has been focused solely, not solely, I guess, like a lot on infrastructure, on that sort of hard power, what we call, I did economics. So I'm just putting things in these terms. So ask me if it's too much. I'm too nerdy. So hard power, so infrastructure, economic development, it has to be in a double digits. And when it sort of adjusted to single digits, it was a good sign actually, because they're starting to take up more social issues. They're starting to take up more other, internal issues that needed to care for, rather than just pure building buildings, etc. And now you get to see promote like a lot of videos about the cities, about the lifestyle, about environment, about all these like culture and things that they want to rebuild again. So one example is I hate this like touristic spot in China, which they built all this mini like Eiffel Towers, mini, I don't know, London Eye, mini stuff in China. I think it's in like Guangzhou.
Okay.
I visited that before, but it's like a mini foreign town where they just really admire foreign culture, but they actually copy other people's architecture without the historical context, and then just put it there, And when I was young, that to me is just cheap, and that to me is just they don't understand their own culture and their own history. So the interesting thing is that these things are now banned from China. They're coming down, and building skyscrapers are also banned. Now they need to think about architecture. They need to think about building cities in a different way. They need to think about how is it more comfortable for people to live in, and how does that look more beautiful for people to come. So when your whole sort of I guess like strategy or country development is shifted or pivoted a little bit to that direction, like good things are gonna come. of course, there are so many other worries about how do they sustain that economic growth. But I'm so excited to see how that soft power and brand building spread across and let people understand Chinese and China is not just about the Chinese government.
Yeah.
It's about so many other things. We need to separate out if there is bias against the Chinese government, separating out government, people, culture, history, and you can look at it in like such a different light.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because soft power, it's the most underrated power in the world, I think one of the reasons why, let's say, for example, America has been like a culturally dominant country and narrative is because of things like Hollywood, right? Media, arts, and culture might seem like fluffy things, but I think that, you know, if you're a kid and you grow up, like, for example, most American kids who've grown up are probably used to villains in TV shows or films being like a crazy Russian person or Eastern European, right?
Yeah.
It's like a stereotype that like the villain who's gonna take over the world for James Bond or some like American hero is gonna be some Eastern European guy or like a Russian Slavic person. And it might sound like really innocuous, but that does have an impact on the way you perceive those cultures as like foreign, as something that's maybe not friendly. And part of that was influenced by the Cold War between Russia and the US. But to me, it's like so important for a country like China moving into the modern era to more promote what Chinese culture is. Like, I mean, I personally, I've started watching more like Chinese reality TV, things like that, just to learn a bit more about Chinese culture. But that stuff is really important. I think it's a big part of what makes a country resonate in other countries.
Yeah. So I've seen Korea and Japan doing that very successfully. So if you look at Japan, that was probably like 20, 30 years ago, like the J-pop, like that sort of craze that went to the West. And what that actually told the whole world is that we are a country that allows freedom and liberty and creativity, and that's why we come out with so many new interesting trends, and that symbolized something. And then Korea, when they're doing it with like Gangnam Style, that symbolizes like another different like thing, right? For people's perception and with like Koreans. And I think Koreans like reputation in the US is a good reputation. People love Koreans. And you know, you can see the difference, honestly. And China, there's a lot of work to be done. And if you look at US, it's not just like the media or Hollywood, it's also Coca-Cola, KFC, brands, you know, Starbucks and Coca-Cola, the food industry. Coca-Cola is one of the earliest company and brand that managed to get into China, despite they're trying to open up and being really, really closed up. But Coca-Cola is not just, you know, the Coke, it's also water. It's like fundamental, like essential food stuff. And I think that is just so interesting how soft power and how corporates holding those soft power can almost be as powerful as a remote country in a way. But these are thoughts that I have when I'm just at night thinking about things. It's a bit weird.
I mean, I can completely relate. Like, I lived in Russia in the 90s, and that was probably my peak pro-Americanness. I was like 8 years old, and I used to only have like 3 TV channels that were Western. It was like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. And I used to obsess over the idea of what American was. I went to school with a lot of Americans too, but I remember when the very first McDonald's opened in Russia, the line was like the biggest line you'll see of any restaurant in your entire life, because it symbolizes like not just capitalism and food, but it symbolizes America, really. And I grew up with that sort of mentality. And it's funny you mentioned Korea, because I feel like everybody loves Koreans. You know, Koreans have such a good reputation. And I was talking to a friend of mine he's Korean, he's from Seoul. He's actually gonna be interviewed on this podcast as well. He told me how it's, despite the fact that, like, by the way, I think Blackpink was named the biggest band in the world right now by certain metrics. BTS have like broken so many records. But my friend Alex in Seoul, he was telling me that despite all the positivity around Korea, he meets so many Westerners, expats who come to Korea, and they're so like amazed at how advanced Korea is. They have this mentality like, oh, isn't this sort of like backwater country? It's kind of crazy. I didn't know Korea was modern. So this misunderstanding in Asia is still like, I think, a very common thread. I mean, from your experience, are there certain things that you see people misunderstand about maybe Asia more broadly, or China or Hong Kong?
Yeah, so many. I don't even know where to start, you know. So I remember when I first my first job at
Yeah.
investment banking, the first comment that I got is like, I didn't know I didn't know you're so bubbly, or I didn't know that you're so sociable. And I definitely don't want to take it in the wrong direction, but I think that is exactly one of the stereotypes that
Hmm.
people have on Asian, especially Asian women.
Yeah.
Like, usually, probably we're a bit timid, we're a bit shy, and it's not coming from, okay, it's not coming from that we're Asia. That's why
Yeah.
Asian, we're shy and timid. It's coming from we are intrinsically in a different culture.
Yeah.
So I'm coming into a workplace that is slightly intimidating, that has people that look completely different from me. So, you know, in the first week or in the first hour, I might be a little bit more reserved than I want to
Yeah.
be. But when you get to chat with me, I am bubbly and I'm.
Yeah, so in that sense, that is one of the stereotypes, is that we are quiet and we only want to, yeah, I guess that we only want to bond with our own people and
Yeah.
not, you know, talk to other people. Um, I'm definitely a victim of that, but I think I had practiced that before.
Yeah.
It's not that I deliberately want to do that. It's intimidating. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
intimidating to not being able to speak the language fluently and, you know, go out of your way to integrate with people. It takes years to
Yeah.
integrate. And I've been here now for like 12, 13 years. And I would say successfully, like have a lot of friends from different backgrounds. But yeah, but, I hope that answers your question. I'm not
No,
rambling on
totally.
too much.
No,
Mm.
totally. It makes sense. Do you think that there's certain misconceptions that are different now than they were 20 years ago? Like some that are more positive or perhaps more in the opposite direction. How has that changed, you think, over the last, like, let's say 20 years?
I definitely think, um, hmm, I would say COVID has made an impact for people to review their opinions about Chinese.
Yeah.
And I think that is caused by, you know, social, political sort of motivations. I'm not observing as much now anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that renewed sense of, okay, they might be a threat. You know,
Yeah.
it's always, Chinese is always a threat to the
Yeah.
world. Doesn't matter what year, doesn't matter, is it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you know, headlines are always, we have been a threat, you know,
Yeah.
and all, like a lot of Chinese that I know in the UK, all they have done, first generation, open Chinese restaurants, work their hardest and serve really good food to the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
That's it. Second generation goes into banking, goes into like, you know, being a doctor, high paid jobs, and mind their own business. That is the second generation.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some, you know, third generation, or, you know, some Chinese now are just lost. They don't have their identity. They don't know who they want to be. And some of them sort of trip or fell into entrepreneurship. And we have this wonderful group going called The Nest. And what
It's,
we do is we just gather people in tech and in entrepreneurship, are Chinese, have an Asian sort of background, but live in London, in the UK, and just want to find representation,
yeah.
Want to find and navigate through this loss of, I guess, like this sense of never having an identity,
Yeah.
and wanting to discover oneself. And it's really, really cool
Yeah.
to see that. And I would love more people to see this progressive attitude and mentality.
Yeah.
But I think that's what the third generation Chinese in abroad is like.
Yeah. I think that is so important. I think you're telling like a story that needs to be told about what the Chinese experience is in the West. And honestly, when it comes to admiration of like things that are going on, I admire a lot of Chinese companies, like tech companies, the world of tech, as like, in my opinion, some of the most impressive, some of the most exciting. I write about that a lot. Are there certain companies that you admire in China or in Asia more broadly?
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, just pointing out like the big ones, like
Yeah.
Alibaba, It's just a legendary story, like the way that it's built, the background of the founder, like everything just makes so much sense. And the way they're approaching and running things, they're just functional, and there is no, I would say there's very little BS.
Yeah.
About different things. I mean, because working in so many companies now in the UK, you see all different things, but maybe because, I'm just deep in the trenches here. But the way as the efficiency I see in China and how they run their companies is just incredible.
Yeah.
Is there like a particular one that you're fascinated with?
Personally, I mean, maybe this is an obvious answer, but probably ByteDance, because I think people underestimate, it's not just TikTok. ByteDance is this very impressive company that's built dozens of apps in things like news, media, education, B2B communications. And what people tend to forget is that ByteDance kind of broke the triumvirate of Chinese tech, of, like the BAT, like Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. ByteDance has pretty much like forced their way into that group. It's like the equivalent of like if Snapchat was 10 times more successful and managed to dethrone Facebook. That's in my head what ByteDance has done. And actually, personally, I have so many former colleagues of mine at Facebook who have gone on to TikTok, ByteDance, and they all love it. It all sounds very positive. And to me, ByteDance symbolizes what I think, actually, I wrote about this the other day. It's the first, but not the last Chinese company to penetrate into Western consciousness. It's the most high profile so far, and it's the first people can like probably think of. But it's not the end. And that's why I think it's so interesting. There's so many Chinese companies that are fascinating, and ByteDance is probably the biggest one to me because it's had such a global impact already.
Totally. And how do you see, the scandals and, the sort of headline coverage about ByteDance and TikTok, like in the Western world?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some like validity to some of them, but I think a lot of it is political grandstanding. I mean, you can even notice this right now. I'm not saying that the controversy is over in the US, but it was a lot more heated leading up to the election, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think these decisions, I can't predict the future, but I don't think ByteDance is gone next year. And so I don't think TikTok's gone next year. I think that we're going to see them like go from strength to strength. And while there's definitely going to be some sort of contention, some sort of PR crisis that won't go away, I'm very confident in the future of ByteDance. And I think there's two elements to TikTok, the controversy. One is political. The fact that people could use it as a scapegoat to get more votes throughout this year. And maybe people are just like misinformed as politicians, which does happen. The second thing is that it is also part of a broader conversation between tech and policy. Like, it's not just ByteDance that is going through a controversial time in terms of politicians like inquiring into what they're doing. Like, it's happening with Google, it's happening with Facebook, and TikTok is just one example of that. But I think it's not just specific to that company, but something that's happening in tech more broadly.
I find like these recent events with TikTok and Huawei extremely interesting, because it's national security at play with, I guess, freedom. The freedom flag that has been advertised to us time and time again from the Western world, and I felt people are, looking at Huawei and looking at TikTok and kind of like, we're not sure what the government is doing, because this is actually impacting my freedom and free market, and what I want to, why I want to live in the Western world. But we're gonna just believe in you for now that this might be the case, and we're gonna give you some time to sort this out. But if this happens again and again and again, where is it going to stop? Where is the boundary between, freedom and national security? And if you put that angle and that dilemma back in, let's say, Hong Kong, suddenly the whole issue is just, okay, there's a different perspective to an issue. I think that's just so interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's an evolving situation too, right? Like, whatever happens now, it's just we're at the beginning of what's going to be an interesting time, even when it comes to things like, I don't know if you're familiar with what's happening in India, but India banned like 150 Chinese mobile apps earlier this year, and TikTok's one of them. So that is still a ban that it's continued. It's not like it's been like rescinded. And other players have tech players that are non-Chinese, of course, have benefited from that in India by having less competition. There are some Indian companies that receive Chinese investment that have to deal with the fact that they're like semi-associated with China, so that makes it harder for them to operate. There's government regulation around that. You have a lot of Western companies that have invested billions of dollars into like Reliance Jio, which is India's biggest conglomerate slash tech company. And it's like what's playing out in India is another metaphor for like an east-west hurricane that is going to happen all around the world, honestly. Yeah.
There's this recent acquisition, a financial company in the UK.
Which one?
I forgot it's bought by World First.
Okay.
So basically, Alibaba's Ant Financial
bought. Yeah,
World
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and a week later, I think World First basically ditched their US business.
Yeah.
Just like that. It's also so interesting because World First is not a company that a lot of people heard of, but control so much transaction and like just bulk volumes of FX going in and out of the UK, and the financial sector in the UK is strategic and so important. And the fact that like a Chinese entity can buy World First and have and made an internal decision to ditch the US business, like I don't know whether there's telling something, and I don't want to read into it, but it is very fascinating to just see history changing its course and happening in front of our eyes.
Well, I mean, I was listening to a podcast earlier today, Professor Scott Galloway, and he was interviewing Neil Ferguson, Scottish economist slash author, and they were talking about the new like tech Cold War between China and the US, right? Like, I can't predict the future about what's going to happen, but I don't think that topic of conversation is going to go away. And if anything, the complexities behind that will increase, because also at the same time, a lot of countries are stressed out right now, stressed out from like a societal perspective, dealing with the coronavirus, stressed out from like the economic strain that the coronavirus gives you, that causes tensions to increase. And it's not the end of that. If anything, it's just the beginning of what's going to happen more. Yeah.
I'm just hoping that, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I hope.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that, the second lockdown in the UK, again, is buying time for the government to deal with the illness. If not, millions and millions of people will be out of a job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. And I'd like to think positively, optimistically, that things are going to get better and that we're going to look back on this crazy time with a smile and a laugh, hopefully, and hopefully looking at it from a better time period, 5-10 years from now. On that positive note, I've got some quick fire questions to lighten the mood a bit. What's the best thing that you have watched recently? Maybe have you seen a good movie, comedy or drama, TED Talk, report, anything you've watched recently? That's great.
I would need to say this may be slightly controversial, but I've been listening and tuning into Jordan Peterson's lectures.
Okay, nice.
The way he talks about responsibility and the way he talks about purpose and value actually resonated with me a lot. Mm-hmm. And when I was listening to him talking about feminism and those issues, it actually made sense to me as well. I know it's super controversial and he has been in so many scandals, but if one just tune in and listen to him speak for half an hour, it is actually very insightful.
Can I just really commend you for saying that, because it is such a controversial thing sometimes that I think most people are like so worried about what people think that they're not honest. So I just want to commend you for saying that, and that's really awesome, because I'm also
speech. Right now, freedom of speech, and I'm practicing freedom of speech and telling people there are some truth in what he said, and there are some other things that I do not agree with. But it's okay to disagree and agree in a disagreement. It's completely fine.
No, I love that, and I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson. I've seen him live. I think he's got some really great points. Don't agree with everything, but I think he's there's value in that. And I was funny. I was listening to this podcast where Diary of a CEO. I think it's by the CEO of Social Chain, who's a British guy. He was saying how he wrote this tweet once that he thought was going to be really controversial. It was just saying like TV is dead, print is dead, which, I mean, to me, it doesn't sound that controversial, but I can imagine for people in traditional media, it is. And he was like debating, should I tweet it? Should I not tweet it? And then he did. And he said he got like 50 people replying, getting really angry at him. He had friends that worked in TV, had worked in print, who were saying, dude, what the hell are you saying? But in the end, he says it was the most engaged tweet he's ever had. And also that the business opportunities where companies reached out to him saying, hey, can we work with you? And the reason they wanted to work with him is because they specifically cited that tweet saying, hey, I really like the way you think. And I love the fact that you had the courage to do that. So I think it's the right thing to do. So is that...
people bought his book. 2 million people bought his book.
Yeah.
The Rules of Life. And he talks about how to stop self-victimizing, and start being productive and start taking on responsibility and letting the world in. Who does not need that? Everyone needs it. Yeah.
Totally. Well, was that, did you watch lectures or did you listen? Because the next question I was going to ask you is like anything you've listened to recently or read recently. So I don't know if the Jordan Peterson's answer is all of that, or maybe there's other things that you recommend recently.
I have watched or read or sort of like absorbed in actually is masterclass.
Yeah.
Listen to like Sarah Blakely's masterclass.
I've heard that's great.
She created Spanx, and also so inspirational. And the way she talks about like how not to take no for an answer, how always be polite, always try, how do I approach sales, how to inject more feminine energy into building businesses. And I think the way that she's saying it is representation. Is like we can do that. And I'm so happy that we have someone like that to say that, because I think in the Western world, somehow always the Western world, right? Women leaders are not the type of leaders that make you necessarily feel the most comfortable. And I'm not sure why, but I think there's a disconnect between like who they want to be and how they think success is and how they project that to get more success. I don't know whether I'm making any sense, but I think if what Sarah Blakely is saying, gave her that success, of course, with hard work, opportunity, luck, timing, everything. If that works, I will try that, even if it takes 5 years longer. That's
amazing. Both very inspirational examples. I love it. Any other media you'd like to share you've watched recently, read, listened to? If not, we can move on to the last question.
I think those are the ones that really imprint in my mind. Others I didn't remember.
Okay. So considering the time period that we're living through right now, there's a lot of stress that comes with something like the coronavirus, some political tensions between cultural misunderstandings, but again, there's a lot of optimism, a lot of positivity of people that are going through transitions in life right now, and there's a lot of great things. It sounds like you're on a great path too. What advice would you give to someone right now who's listening, given all that you've been through?
Well, just keep going at it in a different way. Yeah, if you have a goal. I have a goal when I was 14 to go into Oxbridge, and it took some time, and then I have a goal at 20, probably 20, to be financially independent of any jobs. I only managed to do it now. And to start a business, I'm doing it now, but when it will be started, it will probably be in a year or 2 years time when I finally feel it is a business, it's a fully functioning business. So that's going to take time. It's going to take, everything takes time, and there's no shortcut to businesses. There's no shortcut to family. There's no shortcut to relationships. Like, I don't think anything important in your life you can take shortcuts. And I know this generation, we love to take shorter and shorter cuts. It's gonna come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah, Well, thank you very much. Very good advice. And thanks for your time, Peony.
No worries.
Thank you.
Is this going to go into
Yeah.
because I also want to, I don't know whether how many people in the UK will listen to you, but I would love to talk about like the pen pal campaign.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to just go ahead and do it right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm soft launching my elderly healthcare business this year. So what this business is about is we're building a modern healthcare essential company for the modern day elders. And we don't even call them elders anymore. They're the plus 55s in our society. And we really sort of call them the original movers and shakers. And a big part of our brand mission is for people to normalize the conversation around aging. And I think the best way to do it actually is to celebrate age and celebrate the wisdom these elders have. It's the second lockdown in the UK. I'm starting this pen pal campaign to encourage younger people to start writing, like stop looking at your phone and start journaling, writing, sending these letters to a plus 55 in the UK, make a new friend and maybe make a new mentor. They are the happiest age group, in the UK. They're the most active age cohort. They definitely have a lot to say. I personally benefit so much from their mentorship and their advice. So if you found yourself alone at home this winter and you probably need a different perspective and you need someone to shake you up a little bit, sign up for a Wise Pen Pal campaign.
Where do people find that? Is there a website? What should they look
so
at?
the website is yet to be built, but it will be www.thewise.co/penpal.
Okay, great. And I'll include that in the show notes and everything and tell everybody I know.